Are you enjoying the Single Tracks podcast? Well, we could use your support. The small but dedicated Single Tracks team works hard to share the mountain bike information that inspires epic adventures through this podcast, our worldwide database of trail maps and photos, and daily news and reviews on the website. So consider becoming a monthly, annual, or lifetime pro supporter and enjoy ad-free browsing on the website, free Single Tracks stickers in the mail, and discounts on merch for as little as $3 per month. Go to singletracks.com/support to sign up and to find out other ways you can help support our mission. That's singletracks.com/support. Thank you and happy trails. Hey everybody, welcome to the Single Tracks podcast. My name is Jeff, and today my guest is Jeremiah Stone. Jeremiah is a mountain bike skill instructor who has taught hundreds of riders across the Western United States with Ninja Mountain Bike Performance and the Sedona Mountain Bike Academy. He's also a freelance trail builder and machine operator, in addition to being a really skilled rider. Thanks for joining us, Jeremiah.
Yeah, pumped to be here, Jeff.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background. How were you first exposed to mountain biking?
Oh, man. Grew up in the country, so bikes were always a thing, but mountain biking really came around in college. I was going to school down in Fort Worth, Texas, and there was a dirt jump spot that I heard about, and so I showed up to kind of check that out, and the old guys there put me to work right away, the whole no dig, no ride thing. And I was in, I had some buddies there, and, we enjoyed the dirt, and then we got to ride what we built, and then, we kind of developed a trail around there, and then I bought a full-on mountain bike off of eBay and put it in the trunk of my car and drove up to Arkansas for a downhill race, and had some guys help me build it the morning of the race. And I dropped in first time, and I actually got fourth place in that race. So I was hooked, man.
Wow.
Yeah, I was pumped. So, of course, I got to follow that up with I DNF'd like the next 8 races from crashes. But,
Oh, wow.
that's not the highlight that we want to talk about, But, man, college aged, got into it, found that community, and those guys are still some of the best friends I've ever had. And, bikes, I tease people all the time, bikes they'll save your life and they'll ruin it at the same time, So,
Yeah.
But, those the best friends I've ever had have come from bikes, and they've taken me all over the place. So, I've got a lot to be thankful for through the bike community and bikes itself. So.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you said a lot of those early races you crashed. You weren't able to even finish the races. Like, what was that about? Like, were you someone who was really willing to take risks, or what was it?
Oh yeah, I mean, the idea of living very long just never really occurred to me, and it was one of those things. I was like, I've got this limited amount of time, and I've got this opportunity. Let's go for it. And that was pretty much the extent of my thought process. It was just go faster and give it a shot and see what happens. And if it hurts, it hurts, and we'll heal up and we'll try it again. And it was made for a rough decade or so, man. Turns out getting hurt's not fun.
Yeah,
but,
right. That's why most people try to avoid it. But I guess you learn things in the process. I mean, is that sort of the main way that you developed your own mountain bike skills? Was it sort of this trial and error and well, that didn't work, I'm gonna try it a different way? Did you have a coach? Did you have someone who was kind of helping you along?
We were all kind of in the same boat. We were a bunch of Texas guys that just thought mountain biking was cool, and none of us really had much of a skill set to speak of. So we were all just kind of out there figuring it out as we go and just having a good time. And, being the young guy in the group, I got the honor of being the guinea pig on a lot of things. So, it's just a lot of trial and error. I tell people in my clinics now, one of the first things I tell them is that, I'm congrats to you, and I'm glad you decided to show up. And, they're deciding to not learn things the hard way like I did. And, I just commend them on that every time. It's such a better process, and it makes for such a better lifespan when it comes to, mountain biking and riding as a whole.
Yeah. Well, did you have to relearn how to do things, or had you gotten to a point in your own riding where you were doing things the right way? You had proper technique that you had kind of just stumbled into, or did you have to make corrections once you figured out like kind of the right way to do it?
Oh, well, I kind of stumbled into and figured out, and the hard way and the long way around, and definitely the scenic route getting there, of a basic intermediate skill set. And then from there I started realizing like some of the bad habits and the good habits and trying to address those. And then that's about the time that like some more of the YouTube videos came up. A lot of what I figured out was from watching those videos, like you remember The Collective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I used to watch the Collective every night. So
Oh wow.
I would watch those guys and just try and like pay attention, like what are they doing to make them so good? And then, of course, in my head, try to emulate that, and just try to do things the way I saw them done.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of then started showing up to some events and finding some people that were faster and riding with people that were better than me and learning a lot. And then from there, I just was always willing to be a student. I always feel like I can learn something from other people, and I'm glad to soak that up and listen and try it. And I started doing that, and that really helped a lot. I had bad habits to undo, but I could address them and actually like do something about it. So plus, like with some of the big injuries, they turn into, a big injury can kind of be a hard reset for a rider. So you kind of change your mindset, change the way you do things, because you're kind of relearning everything every time you come back. So that was I think that helped too. So
yeah. Well, as a skills instructor, obviously you see a lot of people who have made that decision to say, I want to work on my skills. I want to improve. What is it that draws people to these clinics? Are you seeing more people that are trying to get faster, or are people just trying to like add style to their riding? Or some of them like you, they keep crashing and they keep, having these issues and they want to learn the right way to do it.
Yeah, the main things, because I find a time in every clinic to ask like, what brings you? And every time it's like, it's safety and confidence. Like they want to ride safer and feel safer, and they want some confidence. And by confidence, I mean like they want to demystify some of the stuff and actually know what they're trying to do, rather than just like guessing at what they're doing and hoping for the best. They want to they want to break some things down and figure out like, oh, I should be trying to do this, not just leaning back and hoping for the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's the majority of it, is like they want to ride safer. They want some confidence in what they're doing. They're they want to keep up with their buddies, that kind of thing. So yeah, a lot of that.
Well, do you think today's mountain bikes make it easier to be a good biker compared to maybe some of the equipment that was available in the old days? Sounds like you started out on, pretty basic equipment and you probably struggled with it. But do you think like today's riders have it a little easier?
Well, I mean, that's kind of, in our clinics and in our lessons, we make sure to never bash anybody's equipment or never really talk about it, because like, the best is the best you've ridden. People that have been on new bikes, like they understand how good new bikes are, but you get a lot of people that have never been on a good bike. Like you don't want to tell them how much better the new bikes are, because then they're, anytime something goes wrong, they blame their bike, and it's like, ultimately the best bike is the one you're on. But I think new bikes are way more forgiving. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because you got to go faster and ride them harder to really bring them to life. Versus like you get on like an old rigid 26 and, basic trail speed feels like you're just giving her.
Yeah.
Versus like a modern enduro bike, like, it feels like you're just waiting for the trail to get rowdy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the equipment's amazing. I think that's a reflection of the progressive mindset of the sport as a whole. And I really enjoy it, but, I try to keep people from getting too hung up on it. So,
yeah. Yeah, a lot of old timers seem to think, I've heard a lot of people say this, like, oh, you really should learn on a hardtail, like that's the way to start out. And I'm curious to know, like, one, do you yourself, when you're doing demonstrations and you're in the clinics, like what kind of bike are you on? Are you on like a really blingy enduro bike and showing people how to do things, or a more basic one? And then also, yeah, what about that? Like, is a hardtail a better vehicle to learn on before you get into these bikes that are more capable?
Well, a little personal anecdote there. I live in a camper and van setup, and I travel with 5 bikes and a dirt bike.
Oh, wow.
So I like
Wow.
all the bikes, you know. So, but for teaching, I try to equip myself with something that is relatable for the students.
Okay.
So like that's usually going to be my trail bike, which is, it was a Santa Cruz Tallboy, and it's currently an Evil Offering, and yeah, it is a little blingy because I like that. I'm a gearhead, so I like nice parts and all that. And I really enjoy putting bikes together and all that. So it's a little blingy, but
Yeah. Did the students ever look at that and say like, oh, well, no wonder he can do that. He's on that awesome bike, you think? Or do they get it?
it's not as bad with the trail bike as it was whenever, like, I did notice I did a couple clinics. I've got my race bike is actually a Mega Tower that's all, push suspension, and just way overkill for anything anybody would ever need. But I love it. And like that one was definitely like that one had kind of crossed the line. Like anytime I went down anything or off anything, everybody's like, "Oh, well, of course,"
Yeah. Well, let me show you. I'll jump on that bike too. I can do that.
Yeah, they're like, "Well, anybody can do it with that." It's like, so that was whenever I was like, "Okay, I need to get a trail bike and make it a little bit more relatable." And then I also picked up a hardtail that I travel with that I use for like flow checking, and then also for like training and all that. And it's just super versatile bike, but I kind of keep it ready. And I know one of these days I'm going to show up to a clinic and it's just going to be like all hardtails, and it's going to be like the stars are going to align, and I'm going to do a clinic on my hardtail just to show them like, here we go, just kind of to make it relatable, because mountain bikers, how mountain bikers are. Like, we like to argue on the internet and we like to make excuses.
Right.
That's just how mountain bikers are. So yeah, I try to keep it relatable for everybody as well as I can. And having the trail bike definitely helps with that. And if worse comes to worse, you got somebody that's really hung up on it, I'm not above grabbing their bike and doing a feature on their bike.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
just to kind of break through. I mean, a barrier is a barrier, and my job as an instructor is to help break through that. So whatever tool that takes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess when people say that, a lot of it is in the context of, being more self-taught. They're talking about, say, line choice, for example, and getting comfortable with that, and thinking about like a hardtail, maybe you need to pick your lines a little more carefully. That's the argument anyway. So do you think there is advantage of learning on a hardtail, or even say starting out with flat pedals versus clipless, or the other way around? Does it really matter what equipment you're on?
I think it's the experience as a whole varies so much with any of them. I think there's pros and cons to all of them. Personally, I think learning on a hardtail is really good because it gives people a chance to focus on what their body is doing rather than what the equipment is doing.
Yeah.
So like if you come through on a hardtail and you're like, oh, that was rough and choppy and da-da-da-da, then it's like, okay, it's because your lower body was stiff.
Mm-hmm.
Versus you come in through that on full suspension, you're like, oh, my suspension settings are off. Or
right.
No, like you've got to ride with your body more with a hardtail and kind of dance with the terrain more. And kind of the same thing with the flat pedals. I'm a diehard flat pedal guy. I barely even, it took me months to be able to even clip in on a gravel bike. Yeah, I just don't like it. I've got a little bit of a moto background too, so like kicking off of stuff and putting a foot out here and there and bouncing off of things, like that's part of my riding style. So yeah, I like the flats, but like and I think riding flats and learning how to ride flats teaches you how to use your feet more than just assuming they're clipped in and all good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
kind of foot position, and then the fine points of weighting your feet and getting your heels down, and all those things I think are really good. It's just a little bit more dynamic what you need to do with your body. And I think that's always good to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on. Well, timing seems to be a big factor when it comes to landing jumps, and particularly when you're trying to clear doubles, for example. How can riders develop a good sense of timing and speed? I know that's something that I struggle with. Is there a way to work on that?
Well, when's the last time you went out and hit a jump more than twice?
Right. Good question. Especially when you're on the trail, right? If you're not, at the bike park, just sessioning or the pump track. Yeah.
That's the big thing. Everybody wants those things, but people they want shortcuts. They want somebody on a video to tell them what's going to fix it. But like, really, you got to find a jump that you like
Mm-hmm.
and that is, that's the right setting. And then you've got to go out and play with your bike. I mean, if you want to learn how to time the jump right, like you got to go and ride the jump and practice your compression and practice the release of that compression and timing it with the natural compression of a jump face and,
Mm-hmm.
Really dialing that in. And, that takes repetition and time on the bike. And it also, any rider will tell you, like, and any builder will tell you too, like, not all jumps are created equal. So, in my clinics, I actually travel with a set of ramps that we use for ninja clinics. And, it's a really nice setup, and I love the ramps because it's super consistent. The lip is in the same place. The face is the same all the time. You can set it up wherever, and, you can get riders a lot of repetition on that ramp, and it's the same every time. They're not having to worry about like some jump lines where it's like, okay, well, this one's got a lot of pop, and then this one doesn't have any, and then you got to hit the brakes for this one. It's like you're working with people that are just now figuring these things out. Like, you need consistent. So, yeah, we use those ramps, and they're just fantastic. We've actually been developing them more and more for our clinics to make them better and better. So, it's a really good setup.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, I've been able to get to the point where I'm comfortable with a particular jump, like you said, if I'm able to do it over and over. But then how does that translate into like something you've never seen before? Like you're comfortable with your jump or your local trails, but then how do you kind of translate that timing into something that might be new?
Oh man, that's a good one. Get comfortable with your jump, and then find some of the other ones around there. And like, before you hit it, look at it, like, what's similar about it, what's different about it, what are some of the variables, and,
Mm-hmm.
kind of trying to identify that thing, developing that eye. Like, is the approach faster? Is the gap, is the table or the gap bigger? Is it more poppy? That kind of thing. That's where tabletops are such a good thing. You can go and kind of tell people it's like test driving the jump when you got a table.
Yeah.
You can kind of roll in at a safe speed, and you can feel at a lower speed where you're not fully committed to airing it out. Like, you can feel where the lip is, and you can feel kind of where the timing is, and kind of work into that, and then start dancing with it from there. And then ultimately it's going to be ride time, exposing yourself to as many of those different jumps as you can, and like paying attention to what you're doing and what the jump is and what's going on there. And,
Yeah.
and then taking, you really need to have that eye and that understanding, for whenever jumps start getting a little bit higher risk. If you start looking at doubles, like, you better be able to read a jump face a little bit, like,
Yeah.
you don't want to just pedal into it and hope for the best. And then, another big thing that I tell people with going from tables to gaps is, think about what you're doing. In moto, I guinea pigged a lot of stuff on the dirt bikes, and you never come up short. Never. It's not even an option. I mean, first time you hit it,
Uh-huh.
I'm going deep. I'm sending it too far, and I'm preparing to land a flat. Like,
Yeah. Okay.
that's how I'm doing it the first time. And then if I come up a little bit short, then I'm actually in the sweet spot. If I go a little bit long, it's probably okay. Hopefully okay, but definitely better than nose casing something and going on your face. That's for sure.
Right. So yeah, your advice is to really like overestimate, if anything, the first time, and be prepared though. Be prepared for kind of a rough landing. You may case it, but at least that's a lot safer than the alternative, which would be coming up short.
Yeah, that's the big thing with jumps. I try to explain to people, like, it's a lot more fun and a lot smoother and ultimately a lot safer. Like, get to the landing. Don't try to don't try to sneak up on it. Like, get there. Yeah, because you can put the bike down a little early, but you can't like lift it in the air and get a little further. So
Yep. Yeah. I mean, in my mind though, right. I'm scared either way, like I'm really overthinking it sometimes and saying like, oh, I don't want to go too fast, but oh wait, maybe now I'm going too slow. And so, yeah, if I could just pick one of those to be wrong about, it would be to be a little too fast.
yeah, get there. You got a lot more gray area on the other side. You got a lot more margin for error over there. And plus, like, I mean, if you're somewhere, hopefully you got some riding buddies or there's some other people out there. Like, if you see somebody that's hitting it really well, like, if I'm sizing up a gap that I'm kind of like, I don't know. I find somebody that's hitting it like a champ, and I ask them to tow me in, and most of the time they're okay with that. So that's a really helpful thing because then you can kind of feel the pace and okay, like there we go, kind of see somebody do it in front of you, and that really makes it a lot more attainable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask, and you kind of answered it for me. But, why is it that it's easier for us to ride jumps, but also like technical features after we see somebody else do it? Like when I'm by myself, I'll come up on something and say, whoa, I don't know about that. But then if I'm with a group and I see, 2 or 3 people in front of me do it, it's no problem. So what is that about?
I think it's because the perspective. When you're on a bike and you're looking at a trail and you're reading a trail as you ride it, like the bike and the momentum kind of forces you to focus on what's important and really kind of blurs a lot of the other stuff versus like if you're on foot and you're looking at something for the first time, it's a lot scarier. Like any trail, any feature, it's scarier on foot. Like I actually kind of have it as a rule of mine. Like I won't do a course walk, before I ride it. I
Oh,
want
really?
to, yeah, like I'll find the roller, the roll through lines, or, I'll ride something, at least ride near it or through it or next to it or something before I get off and look at it on foot. Because when you're on foot, everything's just scarier and bigger. And, every root, every rock, every edge, you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? But,
Yeah.
you get on the bike and it's like, oh no, okay. Yeah, I can see exactly where I need to go. And like, this whole little thing that I was worried about, like I'm actually not even going to touch. So it's really nice. I think that's one of the big things in building. That's one of the things I kind of figured out in trail building too. When you're trying to build a technical section, I tell my guys when we're working on it, like if it looks rideable on foot, then it's going to be too easy. When you get on the bike, yeah, like and a 16-inch ledge when you're on foot is a big step. But on a bike, especially a modern bike, you can roll off of that at a walking pace and you're fine. So I think it's perspective. It's all about perspective.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think too, it's, at least for me, I don't know about others, but definitely seeing that timing and being like, okay, like how fast did the person in front of me go through it? Especially if you're following someone, right? Like you're keeping kind of even spacing between each other. You're not letting them get away from you. You're not like right up on them. So you're pacing their speed. And so they make it through. And so I feel like I can get through it just as easily as they did.
Yeah. That's like, that kind of gives you the chance, kind of sets the stage. You step into that pure flow state. You're not mentally trying to think of like what's coming up or like what do I do, planning for anything. Like you're reading and reacting, and you've got that element of confidence in the speed that you're going. Of this is going to work and their line's going to work,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to like really get in that zone. That's why I think as riders, that's one of a lot of people's favorite thing is dropping on a trail with some buddies that you trust riding with, and like it's magical. Everybody's felt that.
Yeah. Yeah. You're just along for the ride. And I wonder too, one of the things I'm sure you tell students this all the time, about like your vision on the trail, right? Like you don't want to be staring down like right in front of your wheel. And a lot of times we tend to do that though when we're on our own versus riding with someone, right? Like when you're riding behind somebody, you're focused a little bit more on them and like where they are, rather than your own front wheel.
Yeah, I mean, if you're chasing somebody, you're at the minimum watching what they're doing and looking where they are. And then if you notice, like, you'll catch yourself even kind of looking over their shoulder or trying to see what's right ahead of them too. And so it's, kind of get your eyes even further ahead. But yeah, a lot of people when they're riding solo, they look so close and they look down, and that's such a bad habit. I even tell people, like, when you're on your climb, or even a slower section, start training yourself then to look further ahead, even when it doesn't really matter. Like, just building that habit, look further ahead, get those eyes up. So, because that will, it's another one of those things. Like, modern bikes are made for momentum. Like, momentum stabilizes modern geometry. So get those eyes up, keep the body centered, and the machine will do so much, and your body will do so much. And the only limiting factor is your mind, and what you believe you can do and where you're looking has a huge say in that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know which skills are the most difficult for your students to master. Are there certain things that sort of feel unnatural the first time that we do them?
Oh yeah. Everybody wants help with cornering. Everybody wants help with cornering and jumping, and everybody wants help with jumping. And so, like, it's easy to kind of look at those skills and be like, oh yeah, it's these complex skills. And I think it really comes back to what we teach. I think it's the second or third thing we teach in our fundamentals in the mornings is bike and body separation. Like, being able to move your body on the bike is actually the big limiter for people in their riding. Because, like, if you can't move on your bike and move separate from your bike and do that, then that's why the cornering is difficult. Is because, like, if you're riding static, then it's almost impossible to corner well. And then same with jumping. If you're jumping static and you're not moving your body, then you're along for the ride, and that's not going to go well. But, like, being able to move your body and your bike, like, that is the base of what is so necessary for making mountain biking work well for people. And and that's where a lot of people get hung up. They just don't. They ride stiff. They ride stiff. They don't want to get loose. They don't, or they're not aware. Like, how tall are you, Jeff?
I'm tall. I'm 6'3".
Oh Lord, yeah. So, like, this would be a big thing. Like, have you ever had anybody show you a picture of you when you thought you were low and getting after it?
Oh man, I deal with it every single day, right? Because there's pictures of me on the internet, testing bikes and, various events and things. And yeah.
So you think you're getting down low and really giving her, and then you see a picture and you're like, oh my gosh, like, standing straight up.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, that's a big thing. Body awareness for everybody is a big thing, and I think, like, taller people, it's especially important. And then as we get older, it's really important. It's proprioception. Knowing where your body is and where you can move, where you can reach, and what your personal range of motion is. I think we lose touch with that as we get older, and that's a shame, because that opens up so many doors for dynamic movement and having more fun on the bike, and just aging better and all together.
Yeah. Well, why is it so hard for us to get that bike body separation? Like, why do we want to kind of clutch to the bike and, really hang on to it and just kind of, ride it versus, piloting it?
I think it's a combination of, like, lifestyle and mentality. Most people's lifestyle puts them sitting too much and static too much, and not moving dynamically, and and then, like, the mentality follows suit with, if you're not exploring your own body movement and what you can do, then you lose touch with that, you lose awareness of that, and then all of a sudden, like, you think sitting here and reaching across the table and getting your coffee cup is a stretch. It's like, nah, like, like, if that is as far as you are comfortable and aware of moving, then you're leaving a lot on the table. So, switching that mentality of, like, moving your body, reaching, exploring that range of motion, it's huge. It's huge. And as we get older, I think we just lose the element of play. Like a lot of people with mountain biking, they want to watch the video and then get the results.
Yeah.
And they skip the part that everybody actually loves, which is the going out and playing on their bike. Go rock it back and forth. Go see how far back you can lean, and then how far you can lean, and see how far you can lean the bike over. Like play some games with it. Put a water bottle on the ground and ride around the parking lot trying to reach down and get the water bottle and pick it up, and just play. Playing more on the bike, like that's where you learn the things. Look at watch kids on their bike. They don't need the world-class trail and the latest and greatest equipment. Like they just need a sidewalk, and they can keep themselves busy for hours. Like I think adults lose a lot of that, and and that's actually what we're all looking for more of.
Yeah. Is that a big part of your skills clinics? I mean, I'm sure people sign up for them and expect, I'm going to spend a day or a weekend or whatever. And at the end of it, I'm going to be like, 100 times better. Are they surprised when you tell them, you need to keep working at this? Like, I'm going to give you some drills and things that you can work on. But you're going to have to put the time in. It's not like an overnight kind of thing.
Right. I think by the end of a weekend with us, they understand that they have received so much, that they really understand, like, wow, I've got a lot to learn, a lot to work on, a lot to remember. I tell people all the time, like I give them homework, I give them one to grow on, or, one of the things I like to say is that, skills coaching is kind of like landscaping. You can pay all this money for landscaping, but you still got to water it,
Right. Yeah.
So I tell people, like, I'll introduce all these things and show you some things, but like, you got to go play on your bike. I can show you the process and show you the things to focus on, but ultimately, like, it's up to the riders to go do it. And I say that, but at the same time, like, we can get improvement out of riders from Saturday morning to Sunday afternoon and have visible, real, tangible improvement out of them. And it's always amazing. It's always such a trip to me when I first started coaching. I would be so nervous because I'm like, oh, what happens? Like, these riders show up with this beautiful bike and this great kit, and they're telling me they got 10 years worth of riding experience. I'm like, how am I going to help this person?
Mm-hmm.
And then you see them, an hour into the clinic, and they just don't even have any range of motion.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, like you see that, you're like, okay, I'm going to rock their world. I'm going to, like, come over here to the side and like rock your bike back and forth until your seat's touching the inside of your thigh, like do that, like buzz your butt on the back tire, bring your hips up to the bar, like really explore that range of motion. And they start to, if they just open up a little bit of that and then take it to their riding, it's an absolute game changer for people.
Yeah. Well, what are some common bad habits when it comes to technical trail descending? You mentioned that a lot of people want to work on cornering, they want to work on jumping, but I'm thinking specifically about technical trails. Are there things that we do wrong and we don't realize we're doing wrong?
Well, classic bad advice, just lean back. That's the worst thing ever. Like I hear people, when I'm just out riding on my own and I hear, groups of people and they're giving their buddies that advice, like, the coach in me just wants to go over there and be like, wait, like, let me step into your group ride here and fix this. But, it's, I think, like, that's one of the worst habits is people think like, oh, I just need to get my body back. It's, no. Like there's a lot more to it than that, you need to, have your body centered, think about line of gravity and center of gravity. There's a lot more to it. And then, moving fluid. And I think the easiest way to kind of put something out there is like, don't ever have your body where you're at the end of your rope. Like if you see where your arms are at full length or your legs are at full length, like you're at the end of your rope, like you're along for the ride at that point. So, kind of staying within that range of motion, within that ready position kind of thing. And then, getting those eyes up, technical trails, it's really easy to get fixated on things.
Mm-hmm.
I think like, riders, as they get more experience, they get where like when they read the trail, they only see the things that are possible disruptors. Like they don't see every little route. They see that medium off angle route that can really be a problem. And they, like they address that. They're not trying to address every little thing, they're addressing the things that matter. So like vision, body position, like, don't just lean back and hope for the best. And yeah, I think that's one of the big things is like, think about what you're doing. That's a big thing for mountain bikers is, think about what's going on. Think before you do something. You're looking at a technical descent, like think about it.
Yeah.
Think about the approach, think about the exit, think about what you're doing with your body. Think about like, am I holding my breath? Think about it before you do it. And then, also kind of understand that like, if it's this big mystical thing that you just really don't know, or you don't have a plan, then, in all situations, there's a lever A and a lever B, and sometimes you need to pull lever B and walk away. That's one of the things. In clinics we run into that with students. Like they'll get fired up because their personalities like me, where we know that like the end of this is going to be involving a crowd and a camera. It's like you get a group of people at a nice technical descent, and you get these these people that are like they want to do it because everybody's watching. And just kind of step over and be like, well, what's your plan?
Right.
And so many times, like if somebody's not ready for it, like they don't have a plan, and like that's the big thing, like that's the tell, like, leave her be.
Yeah.
But if they've got a plan and they think it through, then like, okay, let's do this. So, I think that's the big thing. Of course, body position, trail vision, where your eyes are, look through the feature kind of thing. And then, having a plan, thinking before you do stuff. So you don't ever want to catch yourself just along for the ride or like at the mercy of circumstances kind of thing. You're in control. Like I tell people, like, these bikes are expensive. You've probably got the receipt for it. Like it's your tool. It's your piece of equipment. It's your bike. That means it does what you want it to do. You're not just along for the ride.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And like, that's a big perspective shift for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Well, when we're going the other direction on the trail, going uphill, are there skills for climbing on a bike beyond just sort of improving physical fitness? I know for a lot of people, climbing is, most of us, almost all of us, that's the worst part of any ride, right? Is like getting up. We just do it so that we can enjoy the downhill.
We don't want to call it the worst. It's just like the less favorite, or the necessary evils of mountain biking. But I think it's the same thing. It's getting that vision, getting the body into it. And then the big thing too is like, this piece of equipment you're on is this amazing high-tech machine. And think back to like, it's a machine, which means we go back to like elementary school where like it creates a mechanical advantage. And so like, use it. You see a lot of people, they don't think about what gear they're in. They don't think about their momentum. They don't think about the physics involved. Their vision's down. Like you've been there. We've all been there, and we see people do it. Like you're coming around a trail, you're looking at your front tire. You come around a corner. There's a climb. You're in 15th gear, looking at the bottom of the trail. You're offline, and now you're stalled. Like you're stuck. No, not a chance. Well, rewind in that setting, get your eyes up, look through the turn, see that there's a climb, get into the right gear, pick a line that brings you through the corner smooth so that you enter the climb right and in the right gear. You put a little bit of power down, where it counts, and then you're at the top of the climb, and you kept your flow up, and you're not sitting there fighting it. You're not grinding gears. Use the machine, use your vision kind of thing. A lot of people when they're learning, like, they see the trail go up and their immediate thing is start dumping gears, go to the eagle gear. Where's my eagle gear? As soon as it goes uphill, and it's like, no, that's not always the right one. Like you want to find one and, keep some momentum and match your gearing with your momentum and the terrain, and like, put a little bit of thought into it and, get to the top, not just like fight it and grind through, or, come into it and trying to shift under load and snap, crackle, and pop your way through it,
Right.
Think about how to smooth it out. And then ultimately, I think, it's important to tell a lot of people too, like, get your eyes up and check the climb out. If it's one of those climbs that, it starts off awful and it just stays awful and you don't want to go up it, or, you're actually riding to get to the best, downhill ever. Like, I don't want to start the downhill with my heart rate racing and my arms numb and legs noodly, like I kind of think about like, what ride am I after?
Yeah.
If that's the focus, like I might get off and push my bike or carry it. Or, if you're riding with people, like maybe this ride would be more fun if we call it party pace, maybe chill out a little bit on the climbs and, slow it down at like a conversational pace. And then everybody kind of has a little bit more fun and, they feel good when they get up to the top and you're not like killing the new rider, when they come limping in and from trying to fight their way up the climb. And then, you've already had your break, which a little etiquette note for everybody on group rides. The break does not start until the last rider gets there. Okay. Just a little thing for all the listeners there, like a little etiquette. You want somebody to fall in love with mountain biking, give them a chance, but, yeah, I think that's, it's like so many other things. Put a little bit of thought into the climbing and, make it a better experience by putting some thought into it and thinking about your goals. And you got to remember, like, one of the things that people always get a kick out of in my clinics, I teach people how to carry their bike. I go through like, I teach people like, here's how you dismount. If you bail, get off the trail. Get out of the way from anybody else that might be making the climb.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's how, here's some tips on pushing your bike without, taking a pedal to the shin. And here's how to pick up your bike and not wear yourself out. And here's how to full on like carry your bike up to the top without wearing yourself out. And feeling good when you get there and keeping the ride going, there's a really good coach that, he's got a saying of, pushing your bike is still mountain biking.
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, I used to be the guy who felt like, if I didn't bike the whole thing, like I'm going out for a 10-mile loop and if there was any part that I had to walk or, get off my bike, hike a bike, like the ride didn't count or didn't count as much or whatever. And yeah, it sounds like the advice you're giving, what you're saying is look at the climbs in particular more strategically and get comfortable. Like don't kill yourself like going uphill, for no reason. Cause like you said, the reason most of us are there is to have fun, especially on the descents. And when we're tired, we're exhausted by the time we get to them, that kind of defeats the purpose.
Right. I think it's all about flow for a lot of people. I mean, as you get better at riding, more climbs kind of make themselves available. Everybody wants that flow, that feeling of flow all the way through their ride. And I think it's one of those things like, what is it? Is it a Le Mans quote where it never gets easier, you just get faster?
Right. Yeah,
So, that's one of those things like, think about your ride and think about, how can you have the most fun? And, for some people that is, like deconstructing these climbs and making them happen. And for some people it might be, step off the bike and listen to the birds chirp and, enjoy a little walk in the woods with your bike and then enjoy the rest of your ride without feeling like you're going to cough up a lung or anything like that. It's just kind of thinking about what you want and aligning your ride and your decisions with those goals. I think it's really important. So, and then of course, like you go to places like Sedona where, technical climbing, that's most of the riding. And so then it's about like unlocking those climbs and finding the skill set and the plan. And, you get that technicality to it and that puzzling and, and then it turns into a whole different beast too, but still same thing applies. Like get your eyes up and think about what you're doing.
Yeah. It seems like your weight distribution too, and your positioning on the bike is really key in those super technical climbs.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you're dancing on the bike, you're working the machine, you're working the body. It's a dynamic experience. And one little note, like I tell people, if you want to be a better technical climber, learn how to track stand.
Yeah.
Super helpful. If you're comfortable with that like 2-second stall, you'd be amazed how many climbs will unlock. If you're comfortable with that.
Yeah. Watch a Jeff Lenoski video, or I just saw this guy in France. He climbed like 700 stairs or something, on his bike, and but it's basically just track standing and kind of hopping around on your bike.
Yeah, get physical. Get comfortable with the stalls and learn how to go into a stall and out of a stall, and not be thinking that like every climb is going to be this steady rhythm. You start technical climbing, you learn that it's quite the opposite. Like it's a fight. And yeah, I also tell people when I'm teaching technical climbing, like
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping all these videos make it cool again. I mean, people are going to watch this and be like, yeah, yeah, climbing's cool. I'm going to work on that. But I don't see that happening.
no, climbing's only cool for people that are good at it.
Right.
Everybody else, they're like, I don't know. But yeah, I think the advice for everybody is like, get your eyes up and think about every part of the trail. Like, what can I do to make my ride experience better?
Yeah.
More enjoyable and better. And if you're out there trying to feel super strong, then yeah, get your eyes up. And how do you tackle that climb? Use your momentum, find the right gear, get physical with it for sure. So, but sometimes it might be just get off and hike it up to the top and enjoy the rest of your ride more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get back to talking about jumping.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, huck or kicker?
Ooh.
Which one's more fun and which one is more difficult to land correctly?
I definitely say kicker is more difficult. More variables. I mean, you got the natural compression of a face, you've got the pop, you've got what happens once you're in the air, you've got so many more variables to it with a kicker. Versus a huck, to me, like
just launch it.
Yeah, I mean, you come from trail building, you start looking at hucks. I try to explain to people it's all about the ratio. Hucks to me are math. I can look at a huck and I can step it off and I can measure it and I can tell you like about what pace it is based on the ratio, and that's whether it's 2 feet tall or 10 feet tall. So that's always that's one of those things that really helps me a lot. If it's a 2-to-1 ratio of like the gap to height, then I know that it's about a jogging pace will get me there. Like a basic trail pace will get me there for sure. If it starts stepping up to where it's like a 3-to-1 of gap to height, then like, okay, like I'm going to have to reach for this one a little bit. So might need to carry a little more speed before and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. So it sounds like the timing maybe is easier on a huck. I mean, I've experienced that myself. That's less, I don't know, challenging or, I'm not afraid of a huck as much as a kicker where now you've got angles and you're trying to figure out exactly like, yeah, where's this going to put me?
Well, yeah, a good huck, like you've just got to figure out the going out and down part. In a full on kicker, you got to figure out the up, out, and then down part.
Right?
Like,
yeah.
And you got to get it all right.
It's a lot of math.
Yeah. There's a lot of variables going on with that. So, I think the hucks are a little bit easier, but the kickers definitely have some more variables. But like you can also kind of get out there and style out a kicker a little bit more. Kind of get a little bit more airtime with it, and then you get to features like there's a feature in Wyoming on Teton Pass where it's a pretty good combo of both. It's like a kicker huck into a corner. It's out of a corner, coming down, kicker huck to a lander to another corner, and it's large and it's super photogenic. So like you got to do it, like get the camera out and get after it kind of thing. And a lot of variables then, but yeah, mountain biking, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to know if you have any tips for helping riders overcoming their fear of trying something new. It sounds like that's maybe not something that you had, at least when you were starting out. I mean, it sounds like you were able to just go for it. But what do you say to people who maybe show up for a skills clinic and they're not comfortable, they're not ready to try something, or they're not excited about it?
Oh man, zero pressure. A little bit of background too of kind of where my path took me. I'm got a resume with about 30 broken bones. I'm on my 4th ACL. I have double-digit concussions. Yeah, so yeah, I've got the rap sheet to go with those kind of decision makings. That kind of decision making process, which I'm now realizing all those old guys were right. We're like, it's going to come back and haunt me later. But that's all right. That's my life. That's my story. But for people that I'm teaching and working with, I tell them, like, if you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. It's not time yet. Like that's one of the big things is I tell them, like, do the things that lead up to that, to the point, like, where when you do size up that next thing, it's not this big mystical, fearful thing. Like, it just, you see it, it makes sense. It's kind of like, if you're looking at a 5-foot drop and it's like, oh my gosh, like, what do I even do? Well, go wear out a 1-foot drop and then wear out a 2-foot drop until those become just nothing. And then a 3-foot drop. And then, soon after that, when you roll up to that 5-footer, it's like, oh, what was I afraid of? Like, it just, all of a sudden it just clicks. And so, like, especially in a clinic setting, my number one answer to the I don't know kind of thing is like, well, don't worry about it. Like, you'll feel it and you'll want it when it's time.
Yeah.
Like, I read an interesting book a while back where it's talking about how, like, a lot of the really high adrenaline, high intensity, high risk sports, like, those athletes don't actually like to be called adrenaline junkies because adrenaline in itself is a fear response. And it implies that they're not prepared. Like, that's the thing is, like, these guys at the pro and at the elite level, like, they're prepared.
Yeah.
Like, they show up to, like, Red Bull Rampage. Like, that's not the first time they've looked at a giant drop. Like, they've done their homework. They've done the work leading up to it. They've built up to it, and now, like, they're taking it one step further. But, like, they've done the legwork to get there.
That's interesting. Yeah, they're not junkies. I mean, I'm sure a lot of them would say that they don't enjoy the fear part of it. I mean, who would, right? If it's truly fear, then that's not enjoyable.
Well, what happens to your body and your mind when you're afraid? You freeze up and you stop breathing. You get stiff and you hold your breath, and you kind of close in. And, like, what's the worst thing you can do on a bike?
Right.
It's get stiff and hold your breath. So, if there's something that's, like, super scary and you're super afraid of it, then it's not time for it yet. Go do the homework to build up to that, and then one day when you roll up to that, it'll just be one of these things you're excited about doing, and you see it and it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it similar advice for someone who maybe they have done it before, but then they suffer a crash, like they were riding at a certain level, and were comfortable doing certain things, say, laying in that 5-foot drop, and then they crash. What advice do you give to those people that are trying to kind of work their way back up to that?
Oh man, number one, check the ego and really kind of listen to what you're telling yourself. If you, a lot of people when they crash, like, they get in this mindset of, like, they've got to play catch up, and, like, that puts you in a bad spot.
Wanting to get, like, right back to where you were.
Yeah, I mean, that puts you in a bad spot. That's a bad mental spot, and it puts you at risk because here's the thing. Like, how old are you, Jeff?
I'm 42.
Oh, okay. So, like, you got some buddies, I'm sure, that at this point, as you start talking to them, like, the older they get, the faster they were.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things, like, that jump that you hit before your crash, it's a lot bigger now than it was when you were hitting it, because in your mind you've put it on this pedestal kind of thing. So, like, I think it's one of those things, like, be honest with yourself, like, kind of check the ego and realize, like, okay, you need to kind of rebuild up to that. That injury, a big injury is a reset, and it's, that doesn't have to be a negative. You don't have to play catch up. You don't have to, like, reclaim what was lost. Like, you get to establish new good habits. And, what I found was if I handled my energy or my injury the right way with my mentality, I would come back so much just hungrier and more excited and enjoying rides more and just really, really embracing a lot of the parts of riding that maybe I kind of overlooked before, like appreciating more of it. And then, like, that put me in the mindset where you're going to be naturally more progressive. And then you find yourself being able to kind of work up And then the next thing you know, without putting any pressure on yourself, without putting any deadlines or stress, you're going bigger and better and faster and smoother and having more fun and being more comfortable, which is ultimately safer on the bike than you were before the injury.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense too with, with a lot of things in life. Like we learn from failure and we learn from mistakes and things, but man, sometimes crashing just seems different to me, like you could have done everything right and just like one little thing that, maybe was even out of your control, it's like you didn't even do anything wrong. Or a lot of times too, you don't know what you did wrong, like even weeks later, you're still like, kind of blaming yourself or trying to think like, man, what happened? Like, why did that happen? And I can see that being like kind of a dark place for some people.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like anything else. If you get fixated on the negative, you're going to go down that tunnel. You're going to go down that rabbit hole, and it's just going to get darker and more negative. It's one of those things like, when you have crashes like that, sometimes there is no answer. You don't have any idea what went wrong. Like there's just some invisible force that reaches up from the ground and pulls you into it, and harder than gravity can, and it hurts, and it stings, and it takes you off the bike, and you're frustrated. But the big thing I think is to find a way to let go of it. Don't define the next chapter of your riding based on a previous crash. Don't get fixated on the crash. I put a lot of effort into not even talking about them later on. Like it's, I will embrace a good case of denial, just try to forget it as fast as I can,
Yeah. Huh.
And then like try not to fall into the same, paths and habits that led up to it. You see these people that, they have this crash because they had this really linear mindset of like, well, if I hit this jump, then I should hit this jump, and then I should hit this jump. And then they crash on that jump, and then they come back and they think it's going to, they take the same mentality and the same process. And then like, guess what? Within a couple months, like they're hurt again. So, it's, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Like, no, like take a chance. And if you crash, it's a chance to reset. It's a chance to evolve and maybe become better all around and stronger mentally and use it as a catalyst for growth rather than, something that stopped your perceived process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. We got really deep on that. That's
Well, there's a lot to it. I mean, there's a lot of mentality. I mean, crashes take people out of the game and take them off of bikes. And, that's not what you want. You want to be enjoying yourself and having that as part of your life for the long run, so there's a right and wrong way to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you kind of alluded to this earlier, talking about jumps and how sort of trail features are built. How do you apply your experience as a rider and as an instructor to your trail building work?
Oh man, that's a really good one because it's actually one of those things I take so much pride in my building because I've got that, and it all stays fresh in my mind. Like I spend a big part of the year building, and I spend a big part of the year riding, and I spend a big part of the year teaching. And, I think all of it, kind of keeping it all fresh in my mind, it really helps. Like when I start to move dirt and build a trail, I feel like I'm more in touch with the riding mentality. I'm more in touch with the people that are going to ride it. And I can build based around that. And one of the big things I tell other builders is like rule number one, when you're building trail, don't get greedy. Don't get greedy. Just because you got a little bit of speed doesn't mean you should build a 30-foot gap. Like if you got a little bit of speed, is it better to have like this one giant feature, or could it be a lot more fun to have like 4 or 5 really fun blue, good intermediate features? Think about your audience, think about riders out there. Like, I don't want to build trail that's going to be fun for 2% of riders out there, and they're going to come out and do it once and get their picture taken on it and then never do it again. Like I want to build stuff that like people get on it and they don't want to stop riding. Like they're taking, that getting a lap when the sun's going down and talking about like wanting to come back out tomorrow kind of thing. Like that's what I like to build. So I think that, I work a lot, with the students. I work so much with, I call them the begintermediates. It's like, you don't know what you don't know, so, you get a lot of people that are that, they've been riding for a lot of years, but like they're an intermediate rider, the intermediate skill set. And like, I think about those people, and I think about the people that have just gotten a bike this year and they're figuring things out. Like, how can they have a blast? How can I build something where they're going to have a blast and learn good habits and enjoy themselves? And then I think about myself, and I think about some of the people I race with and some of the expert riders that I get to spend time with. And I know that, we'll all be dead honest with you. And I'll tell you, man, like, it's fun to go and just override a blue trail. Like, that's a blast, man. Like, that's a good time. Like, you can go, you go ride the Black Diamond trails, and like, that's cool and it's really fun. And I love a good, hard technical trail. But, you know what I'm going to do to get ready for that hard run? I'm going to wear out a blue run. You know what I'm going to do after I do that hard run? I'm going to go play on the blue run. So like, it kind of, when I build, I think about that mentality of like, most fun wins. And then, how do I find that little level, like that perfect level and that balance? And then how do I sneak something in there that lets that rider accomplish something they didn't know they could do?
Yeah.
And like, that's my favorite kind of building, that, and that's what I like to bring. And like, I think of trails when I build them, they're more of a system and like the overall rhythm, like if I've got a downhill flow trail, like I just built a really cool, really fun technical flow trail. And it's, it's one of those things, like when I built the first feature, I thought to myself, like, I want this to be a crescendo type of rhythm. I want the whole trail to just pull you into the next feature and be super fun. And I want it to be technical in a way where, like, if you get this feature, then the next one is available. If you get that feature, then the next one's available.
It's like a video game.
Oh, exactly. I mean, and that sensation, like, that's what really gets people. And like, if you can't do this feature, then you're not going to get the next one. Like, you got to do that. You got to get that one before it, and then, and then of course build a couple spots in the end of the trail where, like, if you do bobble one, like, you can kind of get back into the flow. So, I think, thinking of a trail as a system of features and how to create that sensation that we love as riders. And I think that really unlocks it. And then, like, just don't get greedy. Check the ego. Like, that's cool that you can build a 30-foot gap, but that's not for everybody. When those trails present themselves, like, I'll build the hell out of a 30-foot gap. But, on the majority of trails, like, build what's going to be the most fun. And I think that's kind of, where my focus has been and where I've had the best results.
Yeah. Yeah. When we were talking about timing earlier and about jumps and sort of, being able to trust the trail and like the consistency between, gaps and kickers and tabletops and all that kind of thing, it made me think of Whistler. Like, you go to Whistler, it's like every one of those jumps, that those builders, they're riders, and they, for lack of a better word, like the jumps there are just, they flow so well. And it's like, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. When you get that, though, it's magic, where the trail just kind of leads you into being a better rider in some ways. Well,
if you spend a little bit of time at Whistler, you go out there in the morning, you hear every morning that crew slapping shovels on. I mean, of course, we're talking about A-line. That's the ultimate jump line. I mean, there's people that go up to Whistler and, like, they don't ride anything but A-line. They do it all day. It's an amazing trail. Like, another thing, the history of A-line, those jumps have been around for, how old is A-line, like 20 years old now?
Yeah, that could be.
So, like, that jump line's been fine-tuned for a couple of decades now by some of the top builders and riders in the world. And each one of those jumps has a binder and history and development behind it that is, that is next level. But yeah, I think that one's just such a good staple of, if you get this one, you're going to get the next one. And like, I'll never forget my first time up there. I one of my biggest, proudest moments as a mountain biker was I actually on-sighted A-line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was super pumped about that, but it was because, as a builder and as a rider, I had spent 2 or 3 days in the park riding all the other jump lines before I ever even took my A-line run.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was nervous. I was afraid. I was like, I'd been hearing about this jump line for 20 years, so like, I kind of worked up towards it. And then once I dropped in and I was in the right headspace and I was feeling good. And, I knew going into it that like, if you clear the first one and don't do anything weird, the second one will go. And I just dropped in with that mentality. And the next thing I know, man, I was just pure flow state and like made it happen. And it was, I think that one's definitely like, that's a testament to world-class building. Now, for everybody else out there listening that's not going to go to Whistler, there are places like that. I mean, there's a lot of places where the jumps don't have that kind of rhythm, but there's a lot of places that do. And I think that's so good. Like, Flow Trail and the way that people build it, it's just getting better and better and better. And I think you're being able to find better and better jumps. But there's trails out there. I think it's fantastic when you find a good blue jump line that's got a good rhythm to it, and you can trust it, and you can go out and you can hit this one trail and you do this one run that's just fun, and you're having a good time riding your bike. But if you think about it from a progression standpoint, like you just hit 40 jumps. Like what is it? Fireline. Is a intermediate jump line in Northwest Arkansas that is, just like, when I was there a few years ago, it was the people's favorite. And I think we counted up, there was 44 or 45 features top to bottom on that trail. And like, you could go out there and just lap it all day. And I thought it was so good for a community and for riders. Like, you get to hit so many jumps and get so much practice with that timing in that kind of setting. Well, without ever, feeling like you're going into a death gap or getting in any trouble. Like, they're all tables. So, yeah, I mean, there's great jumps out there. So,
yeah. What are some of your favorite places? You obviously travel around a lot, building and instructing, and what are some of your favorite projects you've worked on, and then what are some other trails that you've ridden that you've really enjoyed?
Oh man, so many of my favorite projects have been on private property. So like, I can't really talk too much about them, but they've been, like the private property is so much fun as a builder because, just less cooks in the kitchen kind of thing. Like it's one of those deals where the property owner tells you what they like, and you get to know them and you ride with them a little bit, and then you get to go out there and build what you think's the best. And, you don't have, some 400-pound city council guy coming out telling you that your jump's not right.
Right.
Like, that happens, that happens too. So, like, I think those work really well. We hit the sweet spot with a build in North Texas, in my hometown, actually. Sherman, Texas. There's a little park there that we started building trail years ago. Just this kind of forgotten city park, and hacking through the poison ivy. And the dog's getting to the squeaker toy here, so she's pumped. But we started building trail there, and it was so funny because it started off as like so many trail builds do, where like the police get called for this guy going into the woods by himself with all this stuff. Like, and the police come out and check you out, and then a couple months later, that same policeman is there with the mayor on the ribbon cutting on the new city supported trail network that, they're the same people that called the cops on you. But yeah, it's fine. But anyway, I digress. Lots of stories. But so the city at this point has been super good, has been amazing, and they helped us get dirt and equipment, and worked with my buddies now, the trail steward there. He also works Parks and Rec department, and like, they had this dirt from these other projects that they just needed somewhere to put. Yeah, well, hey, we got an idea, you know. And then like they've got this, skid steer that, like, well, we don't use it on the weekends. What if we just let you use it on the weekend and build some jumps?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like I showed up just to visit my buddy and kind of see what's going on at the park, and he's got this mountain of dirt and this beautiful skid steer, and here we go.
Yeah.
And so like we built a full on, beginner friendly jump line, a little skills park right there at Binkley Park, and then built every time I come visit, we add some more to it. And we built a full on jump line. I think it's like a 12 hit jump line, on this park that's probably got 6 feet worth of elevation. Yeah, and it's beautiful. It's super fun. People have a blast on it. You see everything from, like these experienced riders traveling through to kids on Strider bikes to, anything and everything in between. It's like that's one of my favorite builds. I love it because like that community had never seen anything like it, and now like they just love it and they embrace it and they're proud of it, and like that gets me so pumped. But yeah. Let's see. Besides that, I lived and worked full time as a builder with Progressive Trail Design there in Northwest Arkansas, and that was just a couple of years ago when everything was starting to bust off. And man, like that was super fun. Like the competition between builders and like the resources available and just the openness to progression and all that was super fun and fast paced and high intensity, and like that was great. And then of course enjoying my private property gigs, and then and ride wise, oh man, I'm so lucky on that. I've been lucky enough that I've been on the road long enough that we've started getting to hit some of the B and C list spots. So like it's not just all A list. So like and you really find some gems there. Some kind of fun wonky stuff, and have a good time. The occasional pallet jump. Yeah, I enjoy those too.
Yeah.
Like not everything's got to be perfect to be fun. So,
Right.
but I tell you, a place for everybody to put on their bucket list, and any builders out there, uh, the Pacific Northwest, getting up to like Bellingham and that area, the clubs and the volunteers in that Pacific Northwest area are putting down as good, often better trail and features than a lot of professionals can right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really impressive up there. And the funny thing is, they don't seem to, I mean, I think you're blowing their spot up right now, telling people about it. They don't seem to want.
Well, I
to
didn't give any specifics. I mean, that's a big region. I'm not going to give away any specifics.
But no, even Bellingham, right? It's not.
Oh, you did it.
Yeah. Well, no, you said it. You said Bellingham. I didn't.
Did I
say
say
that.
Bellingham?
You did. You did.
Oh,
I'm calling you out.
I meant to talk about the coffee and the bakeries.
Right. Right.
But no, like it's amazing what those clubs are accomplishing up there, and I think it's a good model for just progression and what's possible. And that like not everything has to be so expensive. I think that's fantastic. And like I'm all year a while back, you did a podcast with Matt. Is it Stanky or Stank down in Knoxville? Yeah, I'm going to put that on my list for coming across, here in a couple of weeks. I want to go check that out. Like, I think I really enjoyed listening to that one. I think he's on track, and he was talking about like you can't even get a call back from so many professional builders unless it's a certain budget. And
yeah,
I think like we were having this conversation the other day. I think with the explosion of mountain biking this year, with all the changes in the world, I think it's also going to kind of ripple into the trail building world, because everybody loves trails and nobody likes crowded trails. So I think there's going to be more trails, and like it's not always. I think it's going to be good for the community as a whole to realize that like not everything has to be professionally built. Like kind of get back to some of the bandit building, or not necessarily bandit, but kind of grassroots. I guess grassroots is the right one. Yeah. So like
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about it here on the show too. I mean, that's a lot of what's going on with people kind of sticking closer to home and realizing that they don't have opportunities to ride like they want to ride. And that doesn't mean like you need a Whistler, in your backyard, but you can kind of get by and have fun and learn skills on a little mini pump track or, just a short little jump run down a hill or something.
Yeah, I mean Whistler's cool, but that jump line that you went out and sweated over and slapped the lips yourself down the street, the neighborhood jump line, like, there's a lot of pride to be had there. And I think the mountain biking community is a lot bigger than just the mountain bikers themselves. You get over to I know a lot of builders, like there's a lot of builders out there that aren't really riders,
Yeah.
Mountain biking's hard, like they enjoy the sport, but like, they might not have the time or the body or the desire to get in shape and actually ride a lot, but they love to build or they love to cut trail and they love to be in the woods, they're just as much part of the mountain biking community in my eyes, so that kind of, I think, having those guys, I think there's going to be a whole new generation of those coming up. More grassroots projects. I think I really enjoyed, Matt talking about, getting things done in a small town. Like there's a lot of opportunity if you, check the ego and, adapt and get creative. Like, there's resources available and there's support available. And, I think it's fantastic. I love that. And I love seeing communities do that. And, like that's so important to mountain biking as a whole. So.
Yeah, for sure. Well, finally, I want to ask you, what's the best part of living on the road and doing what you do for a living? Just one thing, the best. What is number one? Yeah, that's got to be hard to choose.
If there's anything about somewhere that I'm at that I decide I don't like or I'm over it, I just go somewhere else.
Yeah,
if it gets hot, or if it gets too hot, or if it gets too cold, or if it starts snowing or raining, or like what, I just go somewhere else. Or like if it's, if I get tired of riding flow trail, I go somewhere technical. If I get tired of riding technical, I go somewhere flow trail. It's just that freedom to go to wherever is going to hit your buttons.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for sharing it with us, Jeremiah. This was really inspiring, and I definitely learned a lot. Hopefully our listeners did as well.
Thanks for having me, man. That was a blast. I had a lot of fun with it, man. Thanks for having me on there. I've been looking for this for a long time. And can I shout out some Ninja stuff real quick?
Yeah.
Ninja Mountain Bike Performance. RideLikeANinja.com. We got clinics all over. My lady friend that actually travels with me, she is loading up the schedule now with events. So odds are there's an event coming close. Like, I think 2021 is the year of the Joey. There's a lot of people that bought bikes that, like they're just pumped on mountain biking. And I think learning things in, an easier way, not having to learn things the hard way, like let us help you have more fun on the bike. And, we take a lot of pride in it. And, we want to help do our part to make the mountain bike community better. We like to teach the etiquette, teach the skills, get everybody fired up and get everybody on the right track. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And you make a good point that a lot of us, we'll ride for years. It sounds like a lot of the students up until this point are people who have been riding for 10 years before we realize, kind of hit a wall or whatever in our progression. And yeah, just imagining like if you're brand new to the sport, being able to, have the foresight to say, what, like I'm going to try to do this the right way and like learn skills early on so I can truly enjoy the sport. It seems like a great opportunity.
Yeah, just skip the bad habits part.
Yeah. If only I had a time machine.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Skip the bad habits part. And to all the riders that have already been riding for a long time, I say, like, you don't know what you don't know. So.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll have links to Ninja Mountain Bike Performance for those who are interested in learning more in the show notes. And that's all we've got this week. We'll talk to you again next week.